Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Journey into Nix. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Randy Buehler and Zach Hill, and we've got a down the stretch feature match here for you today. Reid Duke looking in the hunt for his first Pro Tour top 8. He's playing against Jared Boettcher, who came off of a 9th place finish at the last PT. Randy, how close is Reid to getting a top 8 here?
I think if he wins this match, he's in. And you know what? I think he thinks that too, because he's got a little more. Doesn't have the smile you normally see on his face. He knows it. He's thinking about it. I think he took a mulligan here too, if I'm not mistaken. Down to let's get 5 land and a silence the believers is all he's got. So he's feeling a little bit, but a win here, even loss would probably get him into top 8 as an X4 with good tiebreakers. However, his opponent got paired up here. Jared Boettcher is on 3 losses, so he basically must win just to stay in contention.
Okay. We are underway down here in the feature match now. Some scry lines to kick things off. Zach, we've been seeing that throughout the course of the weekend. If you know how to scry, you're going to have a nice advantage here at the PT.
Yeah, I think scry hugely important to this entire tournament, and one of the reasons I think we're seeing so many extremely talented players at the top of the standings. It also lets you do things like Reid just did, which is keep a hand that's basically 5 lands and a spell. With 3 scry lands, you can get to some spells if you need to, especially after you've mulliganed and don't really want to go to 5.
Okay, another land here for Reid Duke, but no play. Jared Boettcher, though, had the turn 2 favored hoplite, and he's going to attack for 1 damage here. So first blood to Jared. He's looking to draw a lot more of it, though, and Brimaz, King of Oreskos, comes down on turn 3 right on time, and it's going to demand an answer pretty quickly here, Randy.
Yeah, this is a good start for Jared. The deck is definitely capable of even faster starts than this. Blue-White Heroic is one of the better aggro decks in the format. I think he's disappointed that Favor Hoplite ends turn 3 and it's still only 1 power, but Brimaz can definitely get some work done.
All right,
Reid's going to have to answer that quickly.
Yeah, he will. He's got another scry land to keep the lands flowing here and hopefully dig himself to some spells. Doesn't look like he's found any yet, and there's Aqueous form on Brimaz here. This is an interesting play from Jared.
Brimaz rather than the Hoplite.
Yeah, Brimaz rather than a hoplite, even though Brimaz on its own is basically just a better threat and probably the thing that would be the target of the removal anyway. He does get a scry effect here, though. He gets the free Vigilance Cat, and he's going to follow up with a Battle-Wise hoplite. This is like my dream draft deck coming together here. And a nice start for Jared Boettcher. Not the most blazing out of the gates, but he's got a nice board state that Reid is going to have to deal with sooner or later. And Bile Blight is going to take down Battle-Wise hoplite. Jared must have been aware of the Bile Blight there, which is why I didn't want to risk.
Well, yeah, I mean, it matched. You saw Reid draw that Bile Blight pretty early, but Brimaz, as a 3/4 creature, he was able to play it right into Reid's 2 untapped mana, and Reid just didn't have any great Bile Blight targets, so the Hoplite, kind of the best Reid's Bile Blight can do.
All right, speaking of the best Reid Duke can do, Silence the Believers is going to basically get a 2-for-1 here. Brimaz exiled, and of course the Aqueous form that he was wearing is also gone. And here's another, this one's a Stratus Walk going down on the favored hoplite, allowing it to keep the beats flowing, and of course the cat's going to keep going. What is it going to take to get Reid Duke out of this as another Battle-Wise hoplite hits the battlefield, Randy?
It's not any one card. I mean, this format doesn't really have a Wrath of God. Reid just winds up having to sort of 1-for-1, 1-for-1, 1-for-1. I mean, Drown in Sorrow can sometimes get him a 2-for-1, but really he just has to keep drawing spells and trading them one at a time.
All right. Well, he's attempting to keep the concentration of spells as high as possible in his hand with these scry lands, but he hasn't found much outside of spot removal.
And that looks like what he has is Silence the Believers. I think Jared has done a great job of diversifying his threats. I think the temptation with this blue-white heroic deck is to just load up one creature like crazy, but by making each one of his creatures into a meaningful threat, he's limiting what Reid's removal can do. I mean, even if Reid uses Silence the Believers here, Jared can still attack for 3 damage, and Reid's all the way down to 11.
Yeah, now Jared continues that trend by casting another Aqueous form, this time on his Battle-Wise hoplite, and Reid's actually going to let him have the scry ability here, which he doesn't really have a choice anyway. Goes to attacks, and Silence of Believers is going to take that thing down. He's still taking damage in the air and on the ground, though, and another Battle-Wise hoplite for Jared Boettcher. So he has been able to keep threats on the table even through a flurry of spot removal spells. Silence the Believers, Bioblight from Reid Duke. Reid seems to have calmed down into a nice rhythm here. We had the Reid Duke smile there.
I totally agree with Zach, though. I love the way Jared has played this game. I mean, he's clearly had a lot of practice this weekend playing against the sort of bug control decks. There's a ton of this running around the top tables. Pantheon in particular is doing great. Wow.
Well, every single turn the same thing. He follows up with a threat, and then the next turn he gets a chance to equip and or orify one of these things, and he's going to actually get in here. This one is Ordeal of Thassa, which is going to put a counter on it just for targeting it, get a scry, and then put another counter on it when it attacks. But the third Silence the Believers of this game is going to take down yet another creature, and still every single turn chipping away its favorite hoplite and a cat.
Well, ordinarily, you want to kind of cast your boost effects on your less impressive creatures, so either the 1/1 or the 2/3 just to diversify more. But I love what Jared was doing there because he was growing his Battle-Wise hoplite large enough that if Reid was able to top deck either a Courser of Krufix or a Sylvan Caryatid, the hoplite would be enough to get through the favored hoplite 2/3, but it's in the air. And with Reid at 5, it doesn't need to get bigger. So again, he's forcing Reid to use his removal spell on different creatures.
You guys getting used to this? Here's another same exact play. This time he has run out of secondary threats, so we are all in on this hoplite. He's going to gain 10 life from Ordeal of Heliod here, and that's going to do it. Jared Boettcher defeats Reid Duke, keeping the pressure on every single turn until he won the game.
It's funny.
We're going to go over to a live look-in after these messages.
Outfit your Magic collection with the newest Ultra Pro accessories from Journey into Nyx. You can see the full array of card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios of your favorite Magic artwork at ultrapro.com. You won't want to miss the conclusion of the Pro season at Pro Tour Magic 2015. Invitations to the Magic World Championship and the World Magic Cup hang in the balance with the action starting August 1st from Portland.
All right, back in the feature match area here in Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to jump over to one of our side tables where we have a player mirror match of sorts. These two gentlemen, I know that Chapin's a fond admirer of Guillaume Wafotapa and the way that he builds his deck and plays the game. And interestingly, neither of them playing control decks here.
Yeah, no, when Pat was interviewed last night at 8-0, he was being challenged. What are you doing? You've betrayed the control play. You've been a control player, Mr. Jace the Mind Sculptor. Right? Where were the islands? And Pat's defense was, Guillaume Wafotapa didn't play islands either. And now here they are playing basically table number 1. Neither one of them brought islands to the table, but here they are. Chapin at this point, by the way, has basically clinched top 8. He thinks he's probably in, even if he goes loss, loss, loss.
Wow.
He'll take the draw to clinch it if he ever gets paired against somebody who can draw, but Wafotapa's on 2 losses, can't afford to take the draw. Hey, that means we get a clean King of the Hill match.
Great. So let's check in on what's going on here. Not what you would normally see from Patrick Chapin, like we mentioned, but he's got Polukranos sitting on top of his library, and there's also a Courser of Krufix sitting on the battlefield. On the other side, there's double Courser of Krufix.
And the Brain Maggot has taken a Brimaz.
That's what it looks like. We've called this deck a mirror, and they're definitely playing the same colors. I think
it's not really a mirror.
Right. And what exactly are the differences, Randy? I see you have the deck listed right there.
Yeah, Pat is really playing a beatdown deck. I mean, we've been calling it junk mid-range. Guillaume Wafotapa is basically playing a Constellation deck. You see the Doomwake Giant there. So same colors, but very distinct strategies here. Pat wants to play Fleece Mane Lion and attack starting right away. And he's really, of these 3-color decks, he's the only guy playing sort of 3-color aggro. Guillaume has as many enchantments as he can get. Doomwake Giant, he's also got Eidolon of Blossoms. So very different strategies, even though the colors line up.
I think one of the ways we can tell that, Patrick is playing 4 mana confluence in his deck. I mean, that is not a card that you jam 4 into a bunch of control decks. He is looking to apply pressure early and cement that pressure through with some of the format's best threats.
Yeah, if you look at the decks, actually, they only overlap with Courser and Caryatid and Elspeth. That's the overlap. I think maybe Thoughtseize. But yeah, I mean, Pat's Fleecemane Lion, Brimaz, Palukranos, those are not the cards Guillaume is interested in.
There are a lot of decks here today that overlap on Caryatid, Corsair, Crufex, and Elspeth.
Indeed.
Yeah. Interesting board state here. We have no non-land permanents over on Patrick Chapin's side of the battlefield here, and Guillaume is firmly in the driver's seat on the beatdown path here. He can hit for 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage if left to his own devices here. So Chapin's going to have to do some work to get out of this.
Now, ordinarily, this is exactly the situation where you'd really want to cast Elspeth. When your opponent has Doomwake Giant, you can't really rely upon those 1/1s to stabilize for you.
All right, Silence the Believers is going to take out Brain Maggot and the Giant here.
And gets back Brimaz.
Was it Brimaz?
Yeah, Brimaz was under Brain Maggot.
And Silence of the Believer is really a breakout card of this environment. I think a lot of the other cards we've seen a lot of are kind of, obvious standouts. Brimaz, you read the card and you're like, okay, this is unbelievable. Elspeth, similarly. Silence of the Believer is, I think, a bit of a sleeper hit, but it's been a completely defining card today.
Sorry, I'm just watching Corsair gain 3 life per land.
Triple Corsair now.
It's rough for Pat and his... I think he called his strategy this weekend mono beatdown control.
3-color mono beatdown
Something
control.
like that. That's how he was drafting too.
All right, let's see if he can begin the beatdowns here. He has Palukranos and Brimaz. So yes, he absolutely can, as he adds 8 power and 9 toughness in just single turn to his battlefield, really stabilizing things and giving himself a nice shot to get back in this. Now, the question is removal spells on Guillaume off top side. What does he have? Because Patrick Chapin's tapped out. Guillaume can have his way with it.
I think I see Banishing Light in his hand. To deal with one of those. I don't know what the other card is, though.
Well, that's one of the unbelievable things to me about Patrick's deck is just how, each and every threat that he casts, you're like, oh, I've got to kill that or I lose. Oh, I've got to kill that or I lose. It turns out that's his entire deck. The only exception to that might be Fleecemane Lion, which you can't kill, and so you'll probably lose.
Yeah. Yeah, Fleecemane Lion, good in the early game, good in the late game.
Meow.
Gain 3, Scry.
Goodness.
Yeah, for those of you just joining us here, this is something that you're going to have to get used to seeing, which is the top card of a player's library being revealed and a lot of extra lands being played and life being gained as a result. The Corsair Crufex has to be the most ubiquitous card we've seen on the weekend. It is everywhere in the feature match area.
I see Guillaume's other card now, by the way. It's Hero's Downfall.
So
he can deal with both Palukranos and also Brimaz.
Interesting. Also, it looks like he's going to hold on to the downfall. One thing he can do is try to time walk, as we say, his opponent here. Try to trick Patrick Chapin into going for monstrous on Palukranos and then killing it.
I'd be tempted here if I was him to just play both cards now and attack for 6.
Yeah.
I really like that play, to be honest with you, Randy. I mean, sitting around waiting, you've got to have something to do with those Corsairs.
All right, why don't we head back over to our main feature match area. We'll keep an eye on this one for you guys and keep you updated as to the results. But Reid Duke and Jared Boettcher await. Jared's up a game here. Reid Duke in the hunt for his very first Pro Tour Top 8. I know Brian David Marshall kind of likes to keep tabs on best players who haven't had a Pro Tour Top 8 yet, and Reid Duke is at the top of his list currently, looking to make that breakthrough here in Atlanta. So turn 1 Thoughtseize for Reid reveals Banishing Light, Eidolon of Countless Battles, God's Willing. This is really like the dream draft deck, by the way. Hero of Eros and Stratuswalk.
You might be saying, okay, why is he, bringing in and keeping in Thoughtseize against an aggro deck? But the thing is, these heroic decks, really, they're almost like mini combo decks. You have to have the right amount of threats, you have to have the right amount of ways to make them better, and you have to have the right amount of evasion. So if you take one of those pieces, your opponent's hand doesn't really do a whole lot. And we're seeing something like that here. Without that Hero of Eros, Jared, you're playing Stratuswalk. You're playing a limited 6th pick. You need something more than that.
And more interesting, it looks like Jared has kept a 1-lander here with just the Temple. He's going to play the Temple and dig for more lands. He did draw an island naturally for the turn, so things look like they'll get moving forward for him. But he's a way off from casting a threat. I mean, if his first threat that he casts is Eidolon of Countless Battles, that is miserable.
Update from the back table, by the way. John Finkel up a game against Yuya Watanabe.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, couple former player of the years battling there, and the loser is out of top 8 contention anyway.
And this has been a great tournament for CFB Pantheon. I mean, it seems like every time we look at the feature match table, one of their players is playing.
Yeah, they're having a great weekend. Stanislav Slivka is up a game as well, by the way. He's up a game on Paul Reitzel.
Okay. So Jared Boettcher still no play here, though he has found yet another land with that plane. He still has the island that he drew in his hand. But Reid Duke has one. Courser of Krufix. We were talking about it a minute ago, and here it is, revealing another Courser of Krufix. So who likes to look at the top card of people's library? We're going to be doing that for a while. Here's Battlewise Hoplite, though. I will say that Jared's done a nice job when he built this deck of getting around that particular 2-4. He's got, multiple enchantments in his deck that just make it bypass right on past that thing and can actually get through it.
Definitely when on Thursday, if you asked me if Aqueous Form would be one of the standout cards of this tournament, I would not have said yes. But it's precisely because of Sylvan Caryatid and Courser of Krufix, like you said.
All right, so let's see if Jared can mount an offensive here. Things look pretty good for Reid Duke in the early stages. Battlewise Hoplite for Jared is threatening eventually. It's not currently. Speaking of Sylvan Caryatid, by the way, Zach Hill, there's now another one of those sitting on top of Reid Duke's library. Let's see what he comes up with. It looks like he may be out of land drops here, but we know he's got another Courser of Krufix at least that he can play. All right, he hits his land from his hand here, and I think we're going to see an attack.
Yeah, I like that attack there because, I mean, if Boettcher has anything, Duke is sitting there with Hero's Downfall, so he's just begging for Jared to try and do something to ambush the Courser. Not that he has anything, I mean, but Boettcher not going to walk right into that 2-for-1.
Interesting here, Reid Duke just passes the turn back. Jared knows that Reid has drawn a second Courser of Krufix in his hand, so he's definitely representing a removal spell, but Jared has no fear and maybe no other options and just goes for the Stratus Walk here. He's going to get the scry effect and the counter and play his land for the turn. Now,
So Reid chose not to Hero's Downfall as a response to Stratus Walk?
He did. If he Hero's Downfalls now, he's going to be pretty unhappy about it, although that would have happened either way. Jared has in his hand God's Willing.
And I actually love Reid's discipline right here. With Courser of Krufix, you can race a 3/3 flyer, especially one that can't block you. You're attacking for 3, you're gaining a life. Whereas if he blows you out with God's Willing, that is a lot of damage, and you just don't have a lot to follow up with. So, I mean, now he's baiting the God's Willing. I guess he could have done it in response, but I think what he's looking for would be just a juicier target at the end of the turn.
No, I think also he takes one less damage this way.
Right.
Yeah, if he does it in combat, then he's going to get another counter on it. So Reid is conserving 1 point of life by playing it this way. Reid, of course, fully aware that God's Willing was an option there for Jared Boettcher, at least as a possibility. And Jared's going to pass the turn back. Reid draws his card for the turn and reveals, there's a land, Temple of Plenty for Reid Duke. So he's got a few options here. He can play another Courser and gain 2 life. He can play this and scry and gain 1. That's what he's going to do. He's going to scry away a land. He's had enough of those.
It declines to play the second Courser and gain the extra life. I think he's interested in the Hero's Downfall here.
I think he also has
I think
Reaper of the Wilds in his hand as well.
Yeah, I think either of those options is appealing. I mean, you've got to be terrified to tap out, though, whenever you're against a deck with this much boost.
Yeah, Randy, is he deciding, am I racing
Right.
or am I not here?
If he plays Reaper, he's planning to race.
Okay. He decided not to play Reaper, so he says, I can win if this game goes longer.
Yeah, second God's Willing was what he was fearing right there, but there was not a second God's Willing, and now he bought himself just a ton of time.
Yeah, but interestingly here, Jared Boettcher has a sweet follow-up.
Update, by the way, on the match we were watching. Pat Chapin came up with an Elspeth and won that game 1.
Ooh.
Pat Chapin over Guillaume Wafatapa. And that, by the way, that's Guillaume playing. He's got the same record as Reid, where a win gets him to probably a top 8. Loss, though, pushes his back against the wall.
Oh, man. Chapin looked way behind when we looked in.
I know.
All right, here's a big play for Reid Duke, though. Prognostic Sphinx, one of the key cards for this format, and certainly one of the key cards in Reid Duke's deck. We have seen this a lot out of the bug deck, and that thing is hard to get through. Jared Boettcher surveying the scene here.
I'm not just to beat a dead horse, but I absolutely love the way that Boettcher builds decks. And a lot of these blue-white decks, you see all heroic creatures. And the problem is, once you're out of gas or once they've dealt with your board, there's not a lot you can do. With Brima's King of Erexos, you have a threat that stands on its own. You know, you see Boettcher with Eidolon of Countless Battles in his hand, electing not to cast it because he would lose the Brimas. But I mean, all it takes is one opening for Brimas to take over a game by itself. Whereas if you just had more heroic cards, you'd need a lot more gas. I mean, Boettcher's still in a little bit of trouble. But Brima's by no means a conventional main deck choice. But or I guess it is game 2, so he knows he's in an attrition fight. But I just love the composition of Boettcher's deck.
All right, duly noted, Zach. And
the Brimazes are main, to be fair.
They are.
Some people have them in the sideboard. Stanislav Sivka is actually sitting in the feature match area with a red-white heroic deck. His Brimazes are in the sideboard.
Right.
Mogus's Warhound took that slot, I believe. So
It's true. Yeah, Mogus made the main deck. How does Annix and Samiti not make the main deck with red-white heroic? That's what I don't get. It's in some of the ones this weekend, but not Sivka's.
all right, so a second Courser crew fix here after an attack from Prognostic Sphinx and a whole lot of library manipulation there for Reid Duke. Another theme we're going to see throughout the weekend, the rest of the weekend here. Jared draws his card for the turn, and I believe that he drew an Ordeal of Thassa.
Yeah, Sivka was talking to me before the tournament. He says, you're going to see all 5 ordeals played at this tournament.
All 5?
All 5 of them. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, we think they're amazing. He's got 8 in his deck. We see Ordeal of Thassa in this deck.
I have seen the black ordeal. I've seen the green ordeal. I have seen all 5 ordeals. Crazy.
One of the many surprises, I think, of this weekend.
Yeah, these heroic decks just look like these awesome draft decks in a lot of ways. Sivka, actually, the way I heard the story on Thursday, Martin Juza did a draft, right? And he comes out and he plays like, you get a pretty good draft deck. He had a Phalanx leader. He put Dragon Mantle as Phalanx leader. Stanislav Sivka looks over and he's like, jumps to cover the table. Why are you showing people my constructed deck?
All right, here's Ordeal of Thassa on Battle-Wise Hoplite. There's a scry on the stack now.
Jesus said he wasn't sure if that meant that his draft deck was awesome or Sivka's constructed deck was terrible.
Jared has a second Ordeal of Thassa in his hand as well, which would enable him to crack one of these immediately, but he's not going to go for it. He's just going to get the attack in there, and he's attacking with a 4/4, and there's a double block from both coursers. So, okay, Jared says, I'll trade 2 of my cards for 1 of yours, and Reid obliges. Interesting there.
I think there was at least a semi-bluff going on by Boettcher there, or he just badly needed to scry. But Reid able to call, unbeknownst to Boettcher, Reid rocking limited all-star Feast of Dreams, which is huge in this matchup.
Absolutely massive. Destroy target enchantment creature or target enchanted creature for just 1 and a black at instant speed.
I wish you guys could see the look on Randy's face right now. Like, are we reading these cards correctly? I mean, Feast of Dreams doesn't stop Brimaz, but it stops basically everything else.
It's the Black Doomblade.
It's the Black Doomblade.
It is a 2 of in his sideboard.
And there's Reaper of the Wilds. Now that Reid Duke has the ability to leave up both of its abilities, that's actually just going to do it right there. Jared Boettcher scoops him up, and we are going to get what is sure to be an intense Game 3 in our feature match area. We're going to be bringing you one of our side tables here.
Yeah, Sivka looks like he's got a Phalanx leader with a Dragon Mantle, just like the Martin Juza story from their limited. Got a Crow and Crusader also wearing a Dragon Mantle. I'm not even sure this is a good draft deck.
All right, why don't we take a look at John Finkel and Yuya Watanabe on our side table here.
All right, fine. Spoil all my fun.
I was asking Ivan Flock, I was like, so you're playing Dragon Mantle with half your deck's white mana. Is that a problem? He's like, yes. I'm like, okay, well, we resolved that.
Is this still game 1 with Finkel and Watanabe?
Yeah.
This
It's game 2. We reported that Finkel's up a game.
Hey, there's a Johnny, Mentor of Heroes. Haven't seen a ton of a Johnny this weekend, but he's around.
Yep.
I've seen a couple copies in the sideboard of a lot of the red-green Elspeth decks, largely to win attrition fights and to convert your tokens into major threats.
And that's what you use playing here. With
Yeah. Also, it's
War
also running
Spheres.
around in, like Andrew Beckstrom, we just did a deck tech with, is playing a Bant Planeswalker deck. It's got, I think, 10 Planeswalkers, including Ajani.
Wow.
Kiora, Elspeth, Ajani.
Literally super friends now
Yes.
that Ajani finds his friends.
Yeah, I was going to do Wonder Twin Powers Activate, but there's 3 of them,
Wonder triplet powers?
I guess.
All right, looks like Yuya's deciding what he wants to do with his Ajani activation here.
Or is that just his hand?
That is
Oh.
just his hand. So did he put counters somewhere?
Read the bones.
Now let's just pick it up from here, and John Finkel is reading the bones. One on top, one on bottom. Draw.
Finkel's on X3 and 1, so he must go win, win, win. None of this draw shenanigans. He got his draw last round, unintentionally, against Paul Reitzel.
Here's Hero's Downfall for the Mentor of Heroes, I believe. No, it's actually going to hit the dragon here.
This allows the Prognostic Sphinx to attack Ajani, if that's how he wants to play it.
Yeah, exactly. I think he thinks he can threaten Ajani with creatures. Both Reaper of the Wilds and Prognostic Sphinx can get through.
Attack Ajani, scry 3.
Both creatures attack Ajani. And Scry 3 from Prognostic Sphinx. That is such a powerful ability, Zach. In terms of cards, how do you break that down? Is that worth a card?
It's almost, I mean, it really depends. I mean, with Prognostic Sphinx specifically, having actual raw card advantage is so good because of the hexproof ability that I don't know that it's quite worth a card, but it is very close. I mean, knowing that you can draw a big threat every turn is just a huge turning point in a lot of these matchups.
The other time it's not worth a card is when there's an Ashiok on the other side of the table. It's like, I don't even understand how you're supposed to resolve Prognostic Sphinx when there's an Ashiok over there.
We've mainly just been seeing people put their creatures on the bottom and
I
just
just see
hope that
them
they
put
don't hit
all their
another.
cards on the bottom. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I guess you want to just try and feed Ashiok as many lands as you can and use their Ashiok to, like...
Yeah, but then they just don't tick the Ashiok up. They're just like, yeah, you put garbage on top of your library. I'll let you draw it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
I saw that. I
Did
saw
you?
that at least once.
That would
Really?
make me very happy.
That is some mind games right there.
That was a courser in play. It helps.
Randy with the punchline.
Okay, I'll leave it.
All right, so Ajani survives the onslaught.
Go ahead.
You were talking about John's unintentional draw. Normally, I think that's a pretty awful thing for most players, but John was getting creamed at the end of his last match with Reitzel. I think he had to have been pretty happy to actually escape with a draw and remain live for top 8.
Yeah,
there was go ahead, Randy.
draw not a catastrophe at this point in the tournament anyway. Since X3-1, everybody who's done the math says that's safely in. Both players stay live. Both players are back against the wall, but they're both live.
So Yuya still deep in the tank here. He's going to start things off by plussing Ajani. We know that. Because either way he goes, he's going to plus Ajani. He's got a Sylvan Caryatid, but he is going to see Ajani, Xenagos, and a land. Planeswalkers is on the list, so he can pick whichever one of those he wants, though it doesn't look like the Ajani he has now is too long for this world. He could put up some defense. Nope, he's going to take a second Ajani.
I mean, we've been talking about the Bant Planeswalker deck, but this Naya deck has got some Planeswalkers in it, too.
Yeah, you know, it's called red-green with Elspeth for a reason. Here she is.
Yeah, the thing is, though, that this Naya deck is great against the aggro decks that are in the field. The problem with this Naya deck is that it is the exact target that Bug Control was designed to beat. You know, both flavors of Channel Fireball played Bug Control because they expected to see a bunch of red-green Elspeth.
Okay.
Not a good matchup for Yuya here.
Yeah, there's no really particularly good way for red-green Elspeth to deal with Prognostic Sphinx. It slips right in under Elspeth's second ability and attacks to threaten Elspeth's first ability. And
So speaking of Elspeth, Yuya minus Elspeth. For one of the ways you can get rid of Reaper of the Wilds, it's actually a pretty resilient threat in this format. All right, why don't we head back over to our main feature match where Reid Duke and Jared Boettcher await in their Game 3. We've had 2 fairly quick games from them, and this is a huge one for both of these players, both in top 8 contention, and Reid Duke even potentially on the verge of the virtual top 8 here if he can win this match.
Yep, Reid up a match on Jared in the standings, sitting tied for second right now.
All right, nice start here for Jared. He starts things up with a favored hoplite, passes the turn back to Reid, who has a patented Scryland on turn 1.
You patented
Yes.
Scryland.
I don't think I've
Update, by the
seen.
way.
Go ahead, Randy.
Stanislav Sivka on the back table wins. So Paul Reitzel loses to the red-white aggro deck, knocked out of top contention by his own trademark archetype.
He's not going to be happy about that, but there is some cosmic justice there. That's the universe telling Paul.
Show you not to play Boros.
3 left.
All right, so a nice follow-up here. Hero of Erois
Very sad number.
for Jared Boettcher. The pretty much ideal 1-2 for his deck. He is on double planes here. Next turn is a key one to see if he can keep the curve going. You know, there's no great sweeper spells in this format. But he is going to want to get at least one of these creatures' toughness up above 2 in case Reid has Drown in Sorrow.
Yeah, Drown in Sorrow is the fear. That's the thing that's the thing the white heroic decks have to live in fear of.
And again, you see, okay, that is an ordeal of Thassa.
Right,
yeah.
he gets to pay only 1 blue mana for it thanks to the Hero of Eros.
5. I'm at 14.
And that's super nice here because it's going to allow him potentially to develop his board further. No, he cannot. He just passes the turn back to Reid Duke, who has not cast a spell yet this game and is under some pretty nice pressure here from Jared. But Hero's Downfall is
Wham.
not going to work. A Johnny's
First pick.
Presence out of the sideboard is going to give it indestructibility and put a counter on it.
And Boettcher basically has free reign here. He can diversify his threats. He's making 2 huge creatures. He's about to draw 2 cards, bigger hoplite, and I mean that was a devastating Johnny's Presence.
I think
from
it's time
Boettcher.
to bring it out, Zach. It was devastating. So
Yeah,
triggers
I
go
agree.
on the
That one's-
stack.
we'll allow that
There
one.
was a scry one there that allowed Jared to sort of massage the top of his library before drawing 2 cards with Ordeal of Thassa, and he even gets to add another threat to the board here with Favored Hoplite, and Reid Duke is up against it. You mentioned it earlier, Randy, there's no true sweepers in this format, so Reid is going to have to do this a good old-fashioned way by picking off these threats one at a time.
Yeah, he was on the draw, so 3 mana, attacked all 3 of them to try to kill a creature. It gets countered by Johnny's Presence. Now he can tap all 4 of his mana to try to kill 1 creature. That one may work, but then the others can get him.
This is brutal here for Reid Duke, sitting at 6 life. Jared absolutely curving out. Reid passes the turn back. Is he going to upkeep, do anything? No, he's not. Jared draws his card for the turn. He's got lethal on the battlefield easily here. Attack, attack, a trigger.
Jared is actually out of gas. He's holding land. So if Reid can stabilize, he's got a shot. Clearly he's going to silence the Believers, the biggest one.
There it is. Silence the Believers.
But he takes, what, 4 here?
Taking 4, and that means that he can't produce a blocker because of Aqueous Form, so he's got to kill that creature.
Go.
Still might fall to 1 from the hoplite.
All right, here we go. Big draw step here for Reid Duke. Let's see what he can put up. Like you said, Zach, a creature, no matter what it is not good enough here. It's going to need to be a hard
Form.
removal spell here.
Aqueous Form is going to win this game.
I'll tell you, a lot of surprises this weekend.
There's Prognostic Sphinx just to make sure that Jared Boettcher doesn't realize that it's not
Have
blockable.
you read your cards? Do you know what your cards do?
And Jared
checking.
does it. And Reid Duke has to extend the hand. Jared Boettcher is going to improve to 11-3 here at Pro Tour Journey into Nyx.
Yeah.
Wow.
Both players 11-3 now. Jared sort of pulls Reid back down to him in the standings. So both players now looking to go win, draw. That is now the plan.
That is a plan for both of them. Let's pop over to John Finkel and Yuya Watanabe to see what they're up to.
You see that wide
in
shot,
their
though?
match.
See the empty King of the Hill table?
So that means Chapin won?
Pat Chapin is back as King of the Hill. And Guillaume Wafatapa is now on 3 losses, joining the mob that needs to go win, draw. Pat Chapin, by the way, wanted to draw to clinch top 8, couldn't get it. He got the win.
Wow.
He got it the easy way or the hard way, however that works. He is running away from the pack, and that is good news for anybody trying to sneak in on X4. Because if Chapin can just keep winning, he's just sucking wins out of the system, which makes it more likely that maybe a second or a third person can get in on 12-4.
Interesting. All right, let's take a look at Yuya versus John Finkel here. Yuya looks like he has a Polis Crusher and a Xenagos going with a couple of soldier tokens. Over on John Finkel's side, though, he does have an active Prognostic Sphinx, so he can help keep Xenagos at bay. And if he needs to do some blocking, he's got Sylvan Caryatids to at least keep soldiers at bay and maybe even chump block a Polis Crusher down the line.
This is still game 2? With Finkel up a game, is that right?
Okay.
I believe that is true, but let's get some confirmation of that on Skype.
Yeah, okay. Confirmed from the floor. This is game 2.
John Finkel, when he was on the main feature match last time, you know, you're not allowed to use electronic devices during the match, but he asked if it was okay if he texted his mom to let her know that he was on TV.
What was the answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was all before any game started or anything.
Nice to see that. Oh.
All right. Looks like Yuya may have just won that one. Yeah, John was at 2, so
Okay.
we get our
now
life
that we got the
totals.
life totals, we see.
Yeah, and we're going to get a game 3 here.
Yeah, this is supposed to be a really bad matchup for Naya. Bug Control is designed to beat Naya. Oh my, I just heard the word from the floor. That was a concession as a response to Worst Fears.
Worst Fears again. That's the second time we've seen that from Yuya in the feature match area. Remember, Prognostic Sphinx on your side of the board is a bit of a nightmare
Oh, wow,
when your
that's
opponent
hilarious.
gets to control you.
Wait,
Yeah, what?
Go for it.
Watanabe's deck is Naya, but in very Japanese style, he's actually splashing a 4th color, right? He's got no black lands in his deck, but off between the Mana Confluence, 3 copies of Mana Confluence, 4 copies of Sylvan Caryatid, he can bring those two Worst Fears in from the sideboard.
Now, what is the deal with Worst Fears? Like, it's obviously a very powerful spell. He could have splashed any number of very powerful spells. Why Worst Fears?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to the deck that it's part of the deck's title. He's calling it Naya Slaver. You have to think Worst Fears is a direct response to Prognostic Sphinx.
Okay.
Basically, what you can do is discard your opponent's hand once you've taken their turn, eradicating all their cards, tapping their Sphinx, and getting all the information about their main deck and sideboard. So really about the best possible answer to a hexproof creature.
Now,
you
one
can
of the
develop.
best-
Why does the Sphinx need to get hexproof again? I mean, what do you mean, again? He's already got hexproof.
So one of the best cards that we've seen in this format, and we will see throughout the course of tomorrow, I'm pretty sure, Courser Crewfix. Let's take a look at Courser Crewfix right now and get a little highlight on this card because, I mean, Randy, would you call it the card of this format from what you've seen so far?
It's either Courser or Elspeth. I was saying coming into the tournament that Elspeth was the most influential, but yeah, I think it's actually Courser. That Courser Sylvan Caryatid shell, you can go so many ways once you start your deck there, and only some of those people are choosing to run Elspeth. So yeah, I think you're right. Courser is probably the card of the tournament.
Zach, did you make Courser of Crewfix?
I did not. I'm not responsible for the. No, I left very shortly before Courser was in design. But yeah, I mean, I've heard numerous people. I think have told the story. But Yoel Larson said Courser is enough of a blue card to make him play green decks. You know, we've heard a lot of different top cards. I think Josh Utter-Layton's ranking was Courser, Sylvan Caryatid, Prognostic Sphinx, saying that Elspeth was kind of more raw powerful, but people would adapt to it. The thing is, you can't really adapt to Courser. I mean, even if you have a destructive Revelry, if they just play it and play a land off the top of their deck, they're already ahead.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind about Courser, you know, we look at the control decks in this format, and they're not necessarily blue. I was actually talking to Andrew Beckstrom before the deck tech that he just did here. He's Bant Planeswalkers, and my question was, you know, what's the standard version of this deck look like? And he kind of shrugged. He's like, well, this isn't really a standard deck. In standard, you want Sphinx's Revelation, right? You want to be Esper. Well, what happens when Sphinx's Revelation rotates out of the format? Like, a lot of the good card drawing in Standard right now is going to leave when the Return to Ravnica block rotates out. You know what the best card drawing in the format is going to be? It's going to be Courser of Crewfix. That is the best card drawing in this block constructed format, and that may be the way Standard looks 6 months from now.
Is this blue enough for Randy Bueller?
It's a blue card, absolutely. I mean, that's where the card drawing comes from. I mean, that was riffing off of your point precisely.
You know, it is interesting to see the difference. So this is a card advantage engine is what we've called it, where you can get ahead on cards. It's not card draw, though, which is interesting because sometimes that does come up where maybe somebody's played 5 extra lands that's drawn them extra spells, but still there's something different between that and actually getting the cards in your hand. You know, we've seen Prognostic Sphinx is kind of a card-hungry card.
Yeah, I mean, the way that you translate that sort of raw cardboard advantage into spell advantage or interaction advantage is all these scry lands that you can play off the top of your deck.
All right, why don't we head back down to the feature match area where play is back underway here. Jon Finkel versus Yuya Watanabe. Both players really needing a victory to keep their top 8 going.
Yeah, I haven't taken a look at Watanabe's tiebreakers. He might be able to lose this and sneak in on X4, but John definitely must win.
All right, Scryland, 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 Scryland so far. No actual permanence on the battlefield yet. Yuya's trying to decide if his Scry is going to stay there or not. Let's see what John has for his turn 3 play. Hey, look, right on time. Courser of Crewfix, and it's going to reveal Mana Confluence. Can't play it, though. This is still John's 3rd turn. Are we going to see dueling? Yes, we are. Dueling Courser. Oh, no land there for you. Oh, never mind. That was his 3rd turn. Excuse me. He does reveal, though, a Johnny, one of his stronger cards.
Gain a life. Sure.
And there's Unravel the Aether on top of the deck for Jon Finkel. He decides to keep it, but must also
he was
keep it
scrying,
revealed.
but then he was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to keep this. I'll just put it back on top. No, got to keep it revealed with the Courser.
And there is a land revealed for Yuya Watanabe to keep his land drops flowing. He's got a full grip and a lot of options here.
And a Stormbreath Dragon on top of his library.
And there's Banishing Light that he's going to put on the stack. He just realized that Jon Finkel has Dissolve mana. And that is going to get Courser of Crewfix out of the way and allow Yuya Watanabe's to battle in there for 2. So 1 problem down. But Yuya also knows that Jon Finkel, if he wants, has the answer to his Courser of Crewfix or the Banishing Light in his hand with Unravel the Aether. And it looks like John is going to sort of get 2 things done with 1 shot there, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the way Yuya cast that Banishing Light. He kind of was almost baiting a counterspell from John. And Yuya's hand, 3 5-drops, Stormbreath Dragon, a Johnny Minor of Heroes, a Johnny, and I think he's got an Arbor Colossus too, so I think he wanted his 3-mana spell to get countered.
Yeah, I think he may have, and that was to clear the way for 5-mana spells, so they didn't get countered, but it did. A Johnny gets countered. I was also talking about the dragon that was on top of the library. That gets shuffled away thanks to Unravel the Aether, so John doesn't have to deal with that potential threat down the line here. That thing can be pretty tough to deal with, but here's Prognostic Sphinx for Jon Finkel to help solidify his board state, give him an attacker, and give him a source of virtual card advantage once again going down the line here. Yuya Watanabe untaps, and what is he going to come up with here?
Coming up. 3.
Well, he drew Elspeth. Though Prognostic Sphinx, just like he's been doing all weekend.
Looks like he's deep in the tank, but that Sphinx is so annoying for the Elspeth player. And there's Arbor Colossus for Yuya Watanabe. It's pretty good versus Prognostic Sphinx. He can keep it at bay. Here's a Thoughtseize, though, for Jon Finkel, revealing a nice hand here. Elspeth, a Johnny, another, excuse me, Courser of Crewfix, and a Stormbreath Dragon for Yuya Watanabe.
I mean, like, what do you take with that Thoughtseize there?
I was just going to ask you that, Zach.
I think a Johnny, Stormbreath Dragon you can sort of neutralize. You're going to have to assume you can figure out how to kill that Colossus or it's going to beat you anyway.
Any thoughts, Randy?
Get Johnny.
Take your Johnny.
A Johnny down. So 2 of Johnnies in the graveyard for Yuya. That does leave Elspeth.
Yeah, Elspeth is not great when Finkel has the Prognostic Sphinx. In particular because Finkel has a Hero's Downfall in his hand. The Arbor Colossus could potentially defend Elspeth, but I think I saw, Hero's Downfall was John's draw last turn.
Right, here's an attack.
Right.
And I think we're going to see a Hero's Downfall kill the Arbor Colossus before blocks.
Yeah, there's no reason not to get the information of what you're scrying into first before committing that.
Go ahead.
All right, so Arbor Colossus down. That is going to free the way for the Prognostic Sphinx to get in there for damage, but more importantly, it's going to let it keep attacking turn after turn here. And are we going to see a dragon for Yuya Watanabe, Randy?
I think so. And he's got to cross his fingers and hope John can't find an additional removal spell. Although with Prognostic Sphinx digging away, odds are John can come up with one.
That's right. Post-combat, Temple of Plenty for Yuya Watanabe. We gives him yet another scry.
John is down to 10 life, so there's only so many dragon hits he can take if he doesn't have a removal spell. And Yuya definitely able to monstrous that dragon.
Looks like what the Sphinx found last turn was a Courser of Crufex.
The interaction between Courser and Prognostic Sphinx, obviously one of the key reasons to play the deck. So John able to set up his mini combo right now.
And John plays his Courser of Crufex, reveals the swamp, immediately plays it, but we need to see that card revealed as well. Only the top one, though, when you do the scries. It's land, Ashiok.
Ashiok doesn't do much here. Is that bottom, bottom, bottom?
Yeah, the
It
Ashiok.
was.
The Ashiok is interesting in this matchup. I mean, you still have good targets in Sylvan Caryatid and Courser of Crufex, but a lot of the other stuff is either Planeswalkers or just costs a lot of mana. I guess your plan is to just plus it, hope you hit a Dragon or a Colossus, and maybe just get a lot of value.
All right, here's the Stormbreath Dragon getting into the red zone, and now Elspeth is going to hit the battlefield here, and John's like, sure. And let's make some tokens. So Yuya Watanabe on the beatdown plan now, Randy. This is just Elspeth to distract the Sphinx and make a bunch of 1/1 attackers.
Yeah, he's in full-on race mode. He just needs to win before the card selection from that Prognostic Sphinx destroys him.
John Finkel right now has 3 cards in his hand that could be relevant.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. The Stormbreath Dragon monstrous ability could sting a little.
So John has to keep that in mind as well, as he can basically empty his hand. He's got Sylvan Caryatid, a land, and a Drown in Sorrow. The Drown in Sorrow also could do a little bit of work against the soldier tokens if he wants to keep those at bay. But in the meantime, Elspeth is going to get attacked here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so threatening lethal on the Elspeth, which is going to, I think, prompt a token to die. Just as good, which is sort of better than leaving Courser to block.
Is John...
Is that 3 bottoms again?
Couldn't tell.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's always tempting to play the land off the top of your library with the Courser, but I honestly think getting cards out of John's hand is of value to him here.
He is in a tough spot here. He's going to gain a life from this. He could have gained a life and then virtually gained another life if Yuya does decide to go for the monstrosity ability on that dragon.
But I mean, it kills him here, right? He's bluffing a removal spell so that Watanabe won't monstrous the Stormbreath? Is that what's going on?
That could be. There's a Bile Blight now on top of the library for Finkel, but that is one step away from being in his hand here.
Yeah, I think he's going to try to just deploy all the cards in his hand.
Right.
But yeah, he's still
got
got
a land.
Yeah, he's just dead to the dragon, I think.
Yeah.
But leaving up exactly 4, I think he's trying to say, okay, I've got silence the non-believers, or well.
Oh, he's down to 2.
And there's a Caryatid, but that is still lethal.
Yeah.
Attack you and monstrous it, and he can discard it to the Sphinx. That's going to be 7. That's going to put John Finkel down to 1. Make some tokens. They're all lethal. Yuya Watanabe sitting at 15 life is not under any threat of dying immediately here.
I mean, yeah, John. Yeah.
And that's it.
Nothing you can
Yuya
do.
Watanabe takes the match 2 games to 1 to keep himself in contention. How does it look for John? He's got a draw on his resume.
Yeah, that is loss number 4. John Finkel will not be playing tomorrow.
Okay.
He's out of top 8 contention. He can still put up quite a nice finish, though. I mean, he can get top 25, a nice pile of pro points. But we won't get to see him tomorrow. We may still get to see Watanabe, though.
Yeah, Yuya Watanabe still keeping himself in the hunt. 2 more rounds to go here.
Yeah, the crew of players that are going to be on 3 losses going into the next round, which is the next to last round, they're going to be a bunch of effectively win and ins because it's win, draw, and in. So got to get that first step win. They're all going to be eager to shake hands in the last round if they can get the wins in round 15.
I can't wait to get the standing sheet in your hands and let you do your thing, because I always just hand it right to you because I know that you can just decode it immediately, and I'm really curious to see exactly how everything pans out as we head down the stretch here.
I'll tell you right now how it's going to pan out. We're going to have some sweet feature matches next round. That's how it's going to pan out.
I think you're right. All right, why don't we throw it back over to the news desk. When we come back, the three of us are going to be bringing you the second to last round here from Pro Tour Journey into Knicks. Don't go anywhere.
All right, thanks so much. Welcome back to the news desk. So let me just give you a few results very briefly. Patrick Chapin defeats Guillaume Wafatapa. Wafatapa on 33, needs a win, and then let's see. Patrick Chapin, 39 points. He is in. Oh, yes. Reid Duke, 33 points. Jared Boettcher, 33 points. Just been chatting with Jared Boettcher's father outside watching the feature match action. Great fun for him, great fun for his boy Jared. Still waiting for Andrea Mengucci against Sung Wook Nam. Equally, no news on Paul Nemeth or Josh Utter-Leighton. They were playing each other. But Ben Friedman has beaten Joel Larson, puts Larson to X4, 30 points. Ben Friedman still alive on 33 points. Jamie Park is up to 33 at the expense of Tom Martell. Martell now at 10 wins and 4 losses. Who knows, could he squeeze in at 12 and 4? Waiting for news of Ritzel Sifka. Finkel, you've just seen lose to Watanabe. Watanabe to 31, 2 wins. He's in for sure. But bear in mind, if he wins next round to get to 34, he's likely to be paired up to a 36 who will want to draw. He won't give it to them. He has to play and win. Watanabe could be a huge roadblock to the top 8 of Pro Tour Journey into Knicks. Raf Levy is up to 10 and 4. That's Dan Jordan gone at 9 and 5. Corey Lack, runner-up from the Magic Online Championship, he's gone 9 and 5. Carlos Morale up to 10 and 4. Brian Braun-Duin is up to 10 and 4. Dan Clark gone. Scott Markison up to 10 and 4. That means Brad Nelson will not be winning this tournament for sure. He's now at 9 and 5. Plenty more results to come. The players are on their dinner break for half an hour, and while that happens, apart from doing lots of number crunching back here, we're going to take you away from Atlanta, quite a long way across the country, to a place called Renton. Where's Renton? It's in the state of Washington, just a little way away from Seattle, and that means the home of Wizards of the Coast. And that's where I had the great privilege to go inside R&D to explore the world of Journey into Knicks. We'll see you in half an hour. Welcome to Seattle, home of Wizards of the Coast. I'm your host, Rich Hagan, and together we'll go on a journey inside R&D, a journey into Knicks. Theros was Act 1, a world of gods, heroes and monsters, Greek-inspired and inspiring. Born of the Gods, well, that was Act 2. Twists and turns, new plot, new characters, and of course, new mechanics. Now it's time for the grand finale to Theros Block. Will Journey into Knicks show us Greek triumph, or will it be Greek tragedy? Like so many great third acts before it, it's going to show us both.
So when I started at Wizards, I didn't actually think my screenwriting background would be important. But we make 3-act stories, you know, that Theros was Act 1, and Born of the Gods was Act 2, and Journey is Act 3, and one of the things I learned about storytelling is you have to progress your story. You have to start at one place and go to a completely different place. And so what we decided in this block was we started very like traditional Greek sort of setting. We wanted Greek mythology as you knew it, start very simple, and then we needed to move towards something. We decided to move toward a war, or a game about conflict, and we thought it'd be awesome to have, you know, we established 2 sides, that there's the gods and all their creations, and the mortals and the denizens of the world and their stuff, and that we sort of mixed and matched them early on, and we start dividing them as the block goes along, so by the end, you could make an all, you know, god deck with enchantments and stuff, or you could make an all denizen deck with heroic and monstrous and things that played with those really nicely, and I like the evolution of the block.
And it's exciting to see kind of all the bits come together. And of course, the most exciting part is to see the last 5 gods actually make it onto cards. They were referred to in the previous 2 sets, and it's great to see just the complete pantheon.
Aetherios, god of passage. If you're on Theros and you happen to die, which happens a lot, your soul must pass the rivers that ring the world till you get to the underworld, and he is the god of that passage.
With Aetherios, we were trying to put white-black in a different spot, one where one might use extort. Give you a little more chance to play with that mechanic, and we wanted to make it more aggressive. We came up with, hey, if my guys die, Aetherios won't take them to the underworld unless my opponent pays some life. Then we actually spent a lot of time deciding should it be 2 life or 3 life, and tried it both ways and decided, yeah, 3's right.
There's the idea on Theros that when an individual dies, their family will create a death mask out of clay for them. And basically that's a confirmation that they are who they say they are when they meet Aetherios at the riverbank. And when they're taken across, that the clay of the mask is then broken up into coins, and it's used as currency in the underworld.
Erois is the god of victory. His domain includes valor and heroism. You've met his brother, Mogus, who's the god of slaughter. And they both govern the domain of war, but they're kind of the flip sides of the coin. And Erois is the patron god of Akros. And Mogus and Erois are always at each other's throats, and their mortal battleground is Akros.
So with Erois, we wanted to enable an aggressive red-white deck. And Boros Reckoner from Gatecrash is an excellent creature for red-white and provides 3 devotion, so we definitely wanted to play into that. Boros Reckoner 3, Erois 4, make an aggressive deck, maybe even get enough creatures on board to trigger Battalion. It all fits together.
Keranos, the god of storms, is both the god of storms but also the god of inspiration. And it's this idea that, inspiration strikes like a bolt of lightning, and sometimes it's literal with Keranos, but sometimes it's much more about an idea or inspiration.
Keranos is a really interesting god, so he's ties into the nature of prophecy and sort of predicting the future in a way. And so the design actually handed off the current ability, which is very flavorful and captures that sort of prophetic nature. This is a really interesting card for constructed. It potentially enables a blue-red control deck. It stays on the battlefield. It's very difficult to remove, provides you card advantage every turn, or can remove your opponent's creatures. And it's a really strong draw to potentially creating a blue, white, and red control deck, something we might see show up in block constructed.
Krufix is the god of horizons. His domain includes mysteries and time, and even the rest of the pantheon kind of views him as this inscrutable elder god with powers that they don't even understand.
So Krufix is green-blue, and green and blue both grow in different ways. Greens tends to grow your mana, and blue has the most card drawing and tends to draw and grow the size of your hand. So we thought, well, if you have more mana, you can draw more cards. But if you draw more cards, you're just going to have to discard them. That's why it gives you both the more mana and the unlimited hand size, so you have room to pack it all.
Krufix, god of horizons, is the green-blue god. The last ability is kind of interesting. So it went through a few changes. Unused mana sits in your pool, becomes colorless. The reason we did this was, if you remember that old card, Upwelling, it kind of mana stuck around through steps and phases. But people found it really fiddly to kind of keep track of what colors they had all the time. So now it's all colorless, but you can pool up that mana as long as you want, save it up for a really big spell. So we expect to see this in a lot of cool decks.
Varika, god of affliction, her domain includes both healing and death, and it is said that she hid the mysteries of all the secrets of life and the secrets of death in the natural world. And so if you know which plants to look for, you can kill somebody or you can make them better.
One of the big changes that we made with her during development was just actually letting you eventually decide that you could take out creature cards from your opponent's graveyard. You might look at this card and it's like, why does my opponent get a snake if I remove the creature card from their graveyard? I mean, one thing to keep in mind is, I guess we've seen the earlier versions where it only let you take creature cards out of your own graveyard. So in many ways, we made the card strictly better. In some ways, we have weird instances where like it might be received worse because it's like, why am I giving my opponent something? But so like it was already a very good card. We made a tweak at the end to make sure that it had even more versatility, that if your opponent was, say, playing a Reanimator deck or had any sorts of other types of things in their graveyard, that you could hit that too, and that they'd be compensated.
The story of Journey into Nyx begins after the battle where Mogus sent his Minotaurs against Akros. and the mortals were successful or the people of Akros were successful in turning the Minotaurs away. In the wake of that victory, there was a great celebration feast, and Xenaghost used the kind of revelry magic that he's adept at wielding to create enough power that allows him to ascend into godhood, to become the red-green god. And in doing so, many of the gods of the Pantheon believe that the mortals have kind of overstepped their bounds, and Heliod, being one of them, actually pins some of that blame on Elspeth. And she leaves Akros and kind of wanders the wilderness for a while, where she then encounters a group of Leonin, and that's where Ajani kind of comes into the story.
There's something we call box checking in R&D, which is humans are pattern completionists. They like to finish their patterns. And so when you do all but one, there's just this growing desire from the audience to go, you haven't done this last one yet. And so we had entering this block, there were 2 of the 10 possible 2-color combination planeswalkers we'd never done. We hadn't done blue-green, we hadn't done green-white. Okay, Born of the God finally does Kiora, and so people were like, okay, sights focus, we need white-green. And the beauty of it was we knew that we wanted to bring Ajani. He was part of the story. And because we knew that Elspeth was mono-white in the first set, we kind of wanted Ajani not to be mono-white. And we're like, oh, white-green, like the stars align. Like, oh, we knew we got it. And then I had to sort of stay calm as everyone bugged me about the white-green planeswalker. I'm like, I'm sure one day we'll do it.
Ajani is the last planeswalker in the block. He's come to help Elspeth out. Ajani was a challenge just in terms of space. We have a lot of mono-white planeswalkers. Gideon, Elspeth is still in the set, Ajani's in the set, and he's usually mono-white. But being from Naya, the Shard, Ajani has the other colors in his sort of repertoire. So we wanted to differentiate him from Elspeth, so this time we made him white-green. One of the cool things that Ajani gets to do is sort of he's helping out everybody but himself. That's his sort of power suite, where Elspeth creates an army and helps the army. Gideon is sort of the mix-it-up white planeswalker. Ajani is the one that is taking the white piece of the color pie, just helping everybody. He's giving them counters in this card. He's helping you find other cards. And his ultimate is gaining you, the planeswalker, 100 life. He's supercharging you and helping you out. The ultimate actually came from an earlier version of Elspeth in Theros. It was 100 life originally instead of the emblem with +2/+2 and flying, but we moved that away from her because it didn't feel as much like Elspeth. It felt more Ajani because it was helping you out, and we wanted to give Elspeth something that supported the army that she was creating and have Ajani be focused on, helping your team out, helping the planeswalker that summoned him, that sort of thing.
In Journey into Nyx, you can clearly see the story play out on many of the cards. Solidarity of Heroes is a card that shows the reunion of Elspeth and her old friend Ajani. In the card Worst Fears, we see the point in the story where Elspeth is tormented by nightmares of what may come when she enters Nyx to confront Xenaghost. In the card Godsend, we see the signature weapon that Elspeth is going to wield against Xenaghost in their epic fight. In the card Deicide, that is the epic fight between Elspeth and Xenaghost, and this is where Elspeth runs Xenaghost through with Godsend. In the card Revel of the Fallen God, we see kind of the wake of the destruction of Xenaghost and kind of the effect it has on his followers. They are frantic, it's chaotic. All they know is kind of these chaotic revelries, and they kind of take it to their most extreme with the destruction of their god. Hall of Triumph shows a memorial dedicated to Elspeth's actions and what she was able to accomplish in Nyx and restoring kind of the order of Theros. So if you look at the cards Solidarity of Heroes and you kind of walk all the way through to a Hall of Triumph, you get the whole story of what Journey into Nyx is about.
The natural order has been restored. Elspeth is responsible for making things right. Everything should have been fine. But Heliod felt like he now knows what a planeswalker is. Xenaghost was a planeswalker. He knows that Elspeth is a planeswalker. And he feels like that Elspeth can do the same thing that Xenaghost did. She too could ascend to become a god, and he feels like he can't allow that to happen. So he takes her sword, he takes the God's End, and he strikes her with it, and he strikes a mortal blow. And then he says to Ajani, take her back into the mortal realm, because if she dies here, she disperses to nothing. So Ajani carries the dying Elspeth down back into the mortal realm, and she dies. But this is Theros, and that's not the end of the story.
Welcome back to Inside R&D. With the loss of an iconic and beloved character, and the war between the denizens of Theros and the very gods themselves, Journey into Nyx presented R&D with a uniquely challenging environment. Now let's see how the design and development teams rose to that challenge and turned Journey into Nyx into a compelling end to an epic block.
Leading a set is quite a big challenge, I found. You not only have to balance the sort of responsibilities of designing a thing with the responsibilities of leading a team, but you also have to pay attention to what the other sets in the block are doing, because they're changing all the time while you're designing your set. So it's sort of aiming at a moving target.
What we've learned to do in third sets, out of necessity, is we have to hold something. We have to go, something you really badly want, that we're just not going to give it to you, and then in the third set we can finally give it to you, and you're excited because you've been waiting for this. So in Journey to Nyx, that was Enchantment Matters. That one of the things that the set had an enchantment theme, that we know people like linear connecting of things, and hey, I want to play lots of enchantments and get rewarded for doing that. We withheld that. The first two sets just didn't do that. And we saved it, so finally the third set could do this thing you've been dying to do. Whew! Here you go.
So Constellation is a cool new ability word you find on several cards in Journey into Nyx. It's in front of abilities on enchantments that give you some sort of bonus when either that card or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control. So if you're a fan of Landfall from a few years ago in Zendikar, it's kind of the same concept, but of course Theros chock full of enchantments, so playing more and more enchantments, we want to give you enough tools to really build an enchantment-heavy deck, so it gives you lots of bonuses for doing so.
Eidolon of Blossoms was a card that we always knew was going to be in the set. From day one, we were going to have some kind of Enchantress, but we had to wait and tease it out for the right moment, and now that we have Journey into Nyx and we have all these enchantments in the entire block, the card is at its peak, and we wanted to put it here just for that specific moment.
Constellation is our mechanic linear that we call it. You want to have lots of cards with the same mechanic on it. So if you have constellations, they help out other constellations, which help out all your enchantments, including your enchantment creatures, which you may have had from Theros and Born of the Gods.
Doomweight Giant is a good example of where you can really get paid off well for having a deck focused around Constellation. Like, it's nice if Doomweight Giant comes into play and gives your opponent's whole squad a -1/-1, for example, if your opponent had Elspeth tokens in play or something, but it really rewards the player that's willing to really go all in and like try to play 2 or 3 enchantments in one turn and like start, getting rid of their opponent's entire board of creatures every turn.
Constellation had a very interesting start. It actually started in a completely different set. Constellation first showed up as the Azorius mechanic in Return to Ravnica. But what we found was it didn't blend well with the other guilds, and so we had to take it out. And we knew we were going to do an enchantment theme coming down the road, and so we pulled it out. And then when we were doing Journey into Nyx, we're like, okay, we want Enchantment Matters. What can we do? And essentially, it's Enchantment Fall, right? It's Landfall, but for enchantments. And like, well, here's the obvious thing. We tried it for Return to Ravnica. It played well. Oh, let's try that.
We want to make sure that the power is correctly distributed across the constellation ability and the creature itself if it is an enchantment creature. So for example, if we want a card you get to the constellation drafter who's building the all enchantment deck, we could make the body worse so that you're not actually caring about the creature unless you really have the constellation ability to turn on multiple times over the course of the game. And the flip side of that is if we want, we need an enchantment creature that is generally good, we can weaken the constellation ability and turn up the size of the creature, just make it more efficient and more attractive.
You play an enchantment, you're triggering all sorts of different things, drawing lots of cards, playing more enchantments, and it's very easy for these things to kind of spiral out of control. So we had to iterate a lot on these cards, adjust mana costs, adjust abilities, and in the end I'm really happy with where we ended up. There's some pretty cool Constellation-based decks out there, and I think players will have a lot of fun with them.
We arrived at Constellation immediately, super easy. Strive was much more difficult. The Constellation mechanic unified all of the gods and their minions into one force. We wanted to depict a war between the gods and the mortals. We needed another mechanic to unify all of the mortals together. We eventually realized that the heroic mechanic was sort of the key to this puzzle. We needed something to really enable heroic and encourage you to play with lots of heroes instead of just having one hero that you put all of your things on. We wanted something that could target all of your heroes at once. So we came up with the Strive mechanic, where the more mana you have, the more heroes you can target, and it encourages you to make an army of heroes.
Strive came from the fact that we wanted something to trigger heroic, but we also wanted to trigger lots of heroic at the same time. We actually tried buyback initially, which is a way to have a spell that targets that you could then reuse on something else. However, Magic R&D nowadays has really stringent requirements on what we're willing to print, and the repetitive nature of buyback spells, even as something as innocuous as Elvish Fury or something like that, doesn't pass our tests nowadays. So we really like how Strive goes. One target hero works, lots of target heroes work, and then it's done. You can do something else.
Johnny's presence and Tests and Tactics, I feel, are two very good examples of what we were aiming for with what we wanted out of a mechanic like Strive. In each case, you're rewarded for building up a big board of creatures. This, like in each of these cases, these can Johnny's presence can help you maintain that board, can make all your guys indestructible, so you can keep doing more and more powerful things. It rewards you for attacking with a lot of creatures. Tests and Tactics is sort of a different situation where if you built up this board and maybe the board clogs down a little, that you have a way to have each of your creatures get bigger and fight each of your opponent's creatures. And again, it's something that just scales up more and more as the game progresses. The more mana you have, the more cool things you can do.
Polymorphous Rush is an awesome card. I played a lot with Cytoshape, which lets you turn one of your guys into another guy, but Polymorphous Rush lets you just take it to 11 and say, I want these 2 guys to be that guy, or these 3 guys to be that guy. So putting it, post blocker step, you get a couple of small flyers in and then turn them into big monsters. All of a sudden, they're getting attacked by gigantic hydras or whatnot, and when they thought they were taking 3.
So a couple things you should know with Strive is that you can target any one creature only once, so you can't pile the bonuses onto a single creature. Got to spread them out. 2, like any spell with multiple targets, it'll check those targets when it tries to resolve. If at least one of those targets is still legal, the spell will do as much as it can, although it won't affect any of the illegal targets. You'll still get the bonus for the targets that are still legal.
It's a really beautiful mechanic in that it leads to a lot of interesting choices and allows for play skill to really determine the outcome of a game, as more advanced players know how to use it better, know when to save it, know when to fire it off right away.
Part of a third set is you have to deliver on expectations. People want certain things, and if you leave the third set and don't give it, that's your last opportunity. So one of the things that Journey tried really hard to do to say is, what haven't we done yet? People really want bestow cards that can go on their opponent's creatures. Let's make that. People want a 1-drop Minotaur. Let's make that. People wanted enchantment matters. Let's do that. That a lot of our design was saying, we want to finish up this set so that there's a sense of completion to the whole block. One of the things that separates auras from equipment is you can put auras on your opponent's creatures. You cannot do that with equipment. And so clearly one of the spaces that people really wanted is, well, hey, some of the coolest auras in Magic you put on your opponent's creatures. Can we do bestow creatures like that?
So originally, when I handed the file off to Dave Humphreys, the lead developer, the bestow creatures did not grant their power and toughness bonus to the creature they enchanted. I wanted them to be very straightforward. You enchant your opponent's creature with this to mess it up, and then later you'll get a creature with a downside. Dave thought that it would be more challenging and more interesting if they worked the same way as the older bestow creatures, and also a little easier to understand at least how they work mechanically if they were unified with the other ones. So now they are more of a tricky puzzle. A lot of the time you're going to want to put it on your own thing. Sometimes you're going to want to put it on your opponent's thing. So they're very skill testing cards now.
With a card like Gnarled Scarhide, you actually have 3 different modes for this card. You can just play him as a 2/1 creature that can't block. Might be something that your deck wants to do. If you have extra mana lying around, you might want to bestow it on your own creature and give it a bonus, but then your creature can't block. There's a third thing you can do is bestow it on your opponent's creature, and suddenly their creature can't block, even though you made it bigger. But maybe you want it to not block, and that's actually what matters the most. So there's 3 different choices for these bestow cards, whereas previously there might have been only 2.
These bestow cards we made to give you interesting choices. In the first set, you're thinking, should I play it as a creature? Should I wait, put it on my creature, and when that creature dies, I still have another creature? Now there's a new option. You can put it on your opponent's creature and give them a drawback. Sometimes it's a close choice, whose creature should I put on? Sometimes it's not. I think Hypnotic Siren, just take their creature, probably the most clear-cut of them all.
At Design Handoff, Inspired and Monstrosity actually weren't in the set. One of the things we noticed as the block went on is that we were adding more and more mechanics, piling up these mechanics on top of one another, and by the time we got to Journey into Nyx, we had so many mechanics in the set that we were really worried that newer players who hadn't been there for the first 2 sets of the block, it would be overwhelming for them with just so many mechanics.
Your intuition may say, well, it's the 3rd set. People have already played the 1st and 2nd set, right? So you can be a little more complex. You don't have to worry about simplicity. That's not the case at all. People come into the game at any time, any day, and the 3rd set may be their 1st set.
So we tried out the set without Monstrosity and without Inspired, and what we realized is that first of all, Monstrosity was actually doing great work in providing a late-game mana sink in Limited, and it really enabled this red-green ramp archetype where you had something to spend all your extra mana on later in the game. And without Monstrosity in the set, we really felt that lack of a mana sink mechanic when we were playtesting Limited. In addition to that, we also had the thought that, throughout the block, players were enjoying these mechanics and really liking playing with them and building up sort of casual constructed decks that played with Monstrosity and Inspired, and that there would be an expectation when the 3rd set came out that we would add more cards that you'd want to put in those decks. So ultimately, we decided it was worth the cost, complexity cost, to add back in those mechanics, and we made some pretty cool new cards.
Well, the way we did Heroic in the very first set was that white and green were the heroic colors that would get bigger. They'd get +1/+1 counters. And the idea was those were the ones where the kind of the warriors were, the soldiers and the warriors. But as we moved along, because in the 3rd set, now everybody started joining the fight. What we did is we took that and we spread it. So now all the colors get heroics that can build them up. Because we knew they would bring Strive into it, and that Strive played really nice with creatures that got bigger. And so we shifted it so as the block advanced, we could sort of show the story through the mechanics.
Whenever we make sets, mechanics, cards, and themes, we also need something in the opposite direction that pushes against it a little bit in case it gets out of control. So Blood-Crazed Hoplite is an example of a card that if there's just too many +1/+1 counters running around, you can pull it back a little bit. Or Deicide if you need to get rid of an enchantment that is a little too prevalent. So we always need cards that push against our theme just a little bit, so those are tools players can use if something gets out of whack.
One of the things that's really hard is that we want to keep adding new stuff. People love new stuff. New stuff's great. And you know what people want? They want old stuff. Give us more of the old stuff. And so one of the big problems about a block is the 1st set has stuff that people want to see more of. But the 2nd set has to add new stuff. But the 3rd set has to add new stuff. And so there's a lot of pressure, especially in the final set, to go, we want to see all these neat things you've already done, but we also want new things. And that part of making that work is you have to figure out reasons why everything doesn't stay.
Devotion as the mechanic faded away in Journey into Nyx because, due to the story, the gods and the mortals are fighting. So there aren't really that many people still worshiping the gods. And given that the gods are the only cards of the set with devotion, they sort of stand out as like sort of symbols that, you know, the mortals don't have devotion. It's just the gods at this point. So it was very obvious that, you know, the gods are the only ones left that care about the gods.
Opening the Journey into Nyx pack first in a draft brings with it some advantages and some challenges. On the one hand, since you're seeing those cards first, it helps us make the new mechanics have more of a splash. You can, say, pick a Constellation card early in the draft and then build around it by taking more enchantment creatures. Unfortunately, it also led to some challenges in that in the same situation, if you pick one of these Constellation cards early, once the first pack is over, you don't get a chance to get any more Constellation cards. So you kind of have to make some educated guesses based on how many you think you'll see and how that'll influence your final deck.
Journey to Nyx brings us Constellation and Strive, and these are going to affect what you take from your other sets. If you've taken Constellation, the enchantment creatures, the bestow cards, you're going to pick those a little higher. And if you have Strive, you definitely want a lot of heroes in your deck. So once again, it's going to change what cards you want and mix everything up.
One of the problems we encountered with the Journey into Nyx was that during design, we decided that we wanted to build in a bunch of build-around cards that encourage you to play with lots of enchantments. The problem was that Theros, the first set in the block, had already been locked down in development. Major changes could not take place in that set. And so there weren't as many sort of bad enchantments as we wanted them to be. The enchantments were too good. And so it was hard for the player who wanted to draft lots of enchantments to get enough.
One card that I've opened and drafted my whole deck around is Extinguish All Hope. You destroy all non-enchantment creatures, so what I did was I drafted a lot of enchantment creatures. It was just a one-way sweeper. All my opponent's stuff died, mine was fine.
We decided that while the enchantment theme was loud in Journey into Nyx and would certainly be something that could be played in Standard and could be played in Block Constructed, it was going to be more of a niche strategy in Limited, sort of like the spider spawning deck in Innistrad that was so popular with the pro players.
So one of the most exciting cards to open in a Journey into Nyx draft is Knowledge and Power. This is an uncommon red enchantment that says whenever you scry, you can pay 2 mana to deal 2 damage to a creature or player. And this is one of those cards that we sort of instill into our limited environments to create what we call sideways archetypes, where it's not something you get to do every time, but if you get lucky and you open this or get past it early, you can really draft around it throughout the entire draft and sort of build like a theme deck based around it. And this is one of those cards, and it's really fun.
Journey to the Nyx, being a third set, had a lot of things it had to answer, as all third sets do, because they're a pain to do. It had to deliver everything you loved about Theros. It had to take all the mechanics you loved and did things with them and evolved them and made them something that really mattered to you. But at the same time, it's the third set. It has to change things up. There's some fatigue setting in. You want to completely change how you think about this block. So it had to introduce a brand new thing. So it had to be the old lovable thing and the brand new, never experienced before thing mixed together. And it's a pain, but I really think we pulled it off with Journey into Nyx.
For the people inside R&D here in Seattle, their journey into Nyx is now over. Ours, of course, is just beginning. Join us next time, when for the first time ever we'll get to go inside R&D for a core set, Magic 2015. But until we meet again on Inside R&D, I'm your host, Richard Hagan, saying bye.
I think most of it was the hair. Right, well that was Inside R&D. Welcome back to the news desk. We're closing in on round 15. Rich and BDM here with you. We have pairings, we have standings. We have the scenarios pretty much worked out. Let's start with this. Table 1, Patrick Chapin, 39 points. Sungwook Nam of South Korea, 33 points. BDM Chapin can just scoop him in.
Patrick Chapin, by the way, 2 full match wins ahead of the field. Literally just head and shoulders above the rest of the pack. Came in with a rogue deck, it's worth noting. Yes, Patrick could shake hands. Patrick could scoop his opponent, into a top 8 berth, but he can also, just continue to be a juggernaut, taking down the field and opening up more spots for potential X and 4 players, 12-4 records, to get into the top 8, which could include a teammate like Jamie Park.
So very likely, you think Chapin will play this round on the King of the Hill table.
I'm going to assume that Patrick Chapin will play this round.
Okay. Now we have 4 clear-cut pairs. Everyone now is at 11 wins and 3 losses in these 4 matches. Yuki Ichikawa of Japan, who, by the way, has a losing record up until this, his 3rd Pro Tour, made his debut at Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, so his first 2, not a success. Kind of pieced it together this time, didn't he? 11 and 3 so far. He's against Jamie Park. Reid Duke is against Guillaume Wafatapa. What a matchup that's going to be.
And Reid Duke, another player on 33 points who, has very good tiebreakers and, potentially becomes, if he somehow loses. Lose-win, I should say.
To be at 12-4.
Right. Mm-hmm. He's at 12-4. So again, if Patrick Chapin can knock another person off of that perch.
Right. It makes it more and more
yes.
certain that Sifka will be, that Chapin will play. So Josh Utter-Leighton is up against Jared Boettcher. So they're in a straightforward, let's get to 36.
And can we just take a moment to just doff our hair to Jared? I mean, 9th at the last Pro Tour. He's a rookie this season. Mm-hmm. Grand Prix success, Open success. But now, following up with another deep run into day 2, he's just surging. But maybe one of the last couple of aggro decks standing in a field full of my first 3 lands come into play tapped.
Right. And then we have at table 5, Ben Friedman of the United States against Italy's Andrea Mengucci, King of the Hill for so long, still hanging around the top tables. One of those will get to 12 wins. So you're guaranteed 4 players there to get to 36 points, barring draws, obviously. Chapin would be 5 on at least 36 points. Sungwook Nam could be 6 if he beats Chapin or Chapin concedes. Then it gets more complex. Table 6 is Stanislav Sifka, 33 points, against twice Player of the Year Yuya Watanabe on 31. So Sifka could be a 7th on 36 points, or Watanabe can go to 34, knowing in the last round a win gets him in
assures him in, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's 33 against 31. Then we get into all the 30s. There are lots of 30-pointers, right the way from 13th place Joe Larson down to 28th Josh Taylor. By our reckoning, in terms of tiebreaks, Joel Larson is head and shoulders above the rest in tiebreaks. He's a good 3.5-4% clear of Raf Levy. So of the 10 and 4s, he is the best positioned. However, with the 11 and 3s, right, they have some terrific tiebreaks. They're going to go up if they lose.
Right. Reid Duke, for example, if he lost, has better tiebreakers than Larson, Levy, Summers, etc.
Wafatapa, the same, would go up. Nonetheless, we believe that the most likely 5 of the 10 and 4s, Larson at 65.8, Levy at 62, Stu Summers, Brian Braun-Duin and Todd Anderson, all in the 61 and 60 range. They are the 5 X and 4s most likely to be able to pray for something good to happen at the end of round 16.
Although, again, their tiebreakers will decay a little, and the people who are losing down into that bracket, their tiebreakers will improve a little bit.
All right, so the feature matches for round 15 look like this. Josh Utter-Leighton, 11 and 3. Jared Boettcher, 11 and 3. Winner there, right on the verge of a handshake, we feel. Patrick Chapin, the king of the hill, the king of the tournament, the king of everything that he surveys right now, up against Sungwook Nam of South Korea. Will he play? Will he scoot?
I think he'll play.
I think he'll play. Yuki Ichikawa of Japan is up against Jamie Park, both 11 and 3. Someone gets right to the edge. And Reid Duke against Guillaume Wafatapa, both on 11 and 3. It's the best hour of Magic at every Pro Tour. It's the penultimate round. It's time for round 15 of Pro Tour Journey into Nyx.